This video is sponsored by Dragon Shield, your destination for the best sleeves, deck boxes, and accessories in the multiverse. Purchases through the affiliate link below help the channel grow and improve. An unnatural hush descends upon the wildlands. No bird songs call, no beasts roam. The air itself is heavy, stagnant. Silence is pierced by low clicks and barely audible skittering. Shadows flash under the canopy. The noise grows louder and more frequent. Skittering intensifies to a steady rumble, then a massive roar as the ground itself gives way to countless swarming bodies. They emerge from forest, cave, sea, and sky in innumerable shapes or sizes. They are as resilient as the Phyrexians, as malleable as the mutants of Ikoria, as relentless as the Eldrazi. Of one mind and will, they descend upon their prey, exploiting weakness through adaptive ingenuity. Largely feared and deeply mysterious, they're a species in tune with and molded by their environment. Their name curdles blood and weakens bone. They are the Slivers. Few races in the multiverse are as adaptable, as resilient as the Sliver. Masters of transformation and evolution, they quickly meld into their environment and even shape it to their whims. Exceedingly dangerous, Slivers were native to an unknown plane before being introduced to Rath and later Dominaria by the Evenkar Volrath, who experimented on and used them as biological weapons. Slivers possess mesomorphic abilities which allows them to alter their body composition and morphology quickly, a versatility that is further exemplified by their representation in colorless and all 5 colors of mana. They embrace the surging mana ley lines around them, channeling the power to advance unique adaptations. Our study of Slivers will first focus on their shared characteristics, abilities that set them apart from other species. We'll then focus on the differences between Sliver hive minds and their respective broods. Unlike many other races, the plane on which Slivers dwell has an impact on their evolution, but not as significantly as the nature of their brood's hive mind. As such, many differing features can be traced through swarm lineages and bloodlines. Alright, let's dive in. Slivers first appeared in Magic during the Tempest block when they were introduced to Phyrexia's artificial staging ground of Wrath in the years leading up to Invasion. Volrath traveled to the Slivers' home plane where he discovered this awe-inspiring and highly adaptable species. As a fellow shapeshifter, he was fascinated by the Slivers' ability to change their features and body chemistry as their environment necessitated. Since their introduction, Slivers have been revisited in several sets throughout history. Of the over 100 cards printed, Slivers are roughly evenly distributed between all 5 colors of mana, highlighting the race's natural versatility, using their surroundings as fuel for their continued evolution. The hallmark feature of Slivers is their innate interconnectedness through a shared hive mind, which distinguishes them from other species and multiplies their adaptive versatility. A single Sliver, though far from harmless, doesn't represent the collective might of the hive. Alone, it lacks purpose, drive, or motivation, as well as any sense of self-preservation. It's a social creature that relies on communication with the swarm for survival. Cut from its hive mind, it would wither to dust. But with support of nearby Slivers and with direction from the central mind, an individual Sliver's potential is fully realized. Like feelers or antennae, the information gathered by a Sliver is instantly shared to the rest of the swarm. This allows them to coordinate their efforts, easily transfer their adaptive mutations to others nearby, and present a united front against threats. We can see this in their card abilities to grant boons to all Slivers, and Hannah of the Skyship Weatherlight makes this observation in the flavortext of Mind Whip Sliver. They share more than their thoughts. We must shatter their link quickly. What's known by one Sliver is known by all. Each swarm or brood has at its center a hive mind. The hive mind acts as a brain, a central nervous system for the brood, and typically manifests itself as a supremely powerful Sliver in tune with all 5 colors of mana. Their unique aura is felt and sought by others, craving structure and purpose. The Slivers of the hive align themselves to this central lord whose will becomes their own. They act as the brain of the collective, sending orders to be performed to ensure survival of the brood. The central hive mind is represented in cards like Sliver Queen and Sliver Overlord. Another feature unique to Slivers is their immensely malleable physicality and adaptive evolution. Slivers are mesomorphic creatures that, like molding clay, can quickly change their genetic and physical attributes. Not quite as fluid as changelings or shapeshifters, a sliver can nevertheless surprise adversaries with quick adaptations. As a sponge gathers moisture, so too does a sliver soak up its environment, the natural hazards, the threats of predators, the response of prey. All are incorporated and at times literally digested, as a sliver's body undergoes physiological change to adapt to ever-shifting environs. Hard, chitinous plates form a crude armor over slivers that must endure physical assaults. Sharp, bony blades extend from joints to slice through ranks of foes. Membranous wings unfold from the back of a sliver that must navigate windy mountain peaks. This sudden adaptation is made all the more dangerous by the innate connection of the hive mind, which instantly extends a sliver's learned evolution to nearby members of the swarm. This makes slivers the pinnacle of versatility, adapting at a moment to what is needed. Master chameleons that shape themselves to their environment. Mechanically, this is represented in a sliver card's ability to extend learned adaptations to others, strengthening all slivers of the hive. Although sliver bodies are highly adaptable, there are features that are shared across the swarm. Most are physically represented with sinuous, almost snake-like bodies, from which extend a single taloned arm and a powerful tail. Their head is narrow and pointed, often covered in bony armor and lacking in such features as eyes or mouth. This is most clearly represented in cards like Armor Sliver, Fury Sliver, and Horned Sliver. Those slivers found on the plane of Shandalar have evolved features more humanoid, with arms, legs, and developed facial features, though they remain largely alien in appearance. To fully understand the differences among slivers, it's important to segregate not only by plane but also by hive mind, as the central nervous system and leader of each sliver brood is what directs their form and function, ultimately making the most impact on their skills. We begin with the first sliver and its swarm. Though it wasn't the first hive mind represented in-game, the name given to the first sliver suggests that this is the great progenitor of the entire race, the history of which has been shrouded in mystery for centuries. As the primordial hive mind, it was critical that the first sliver propagate with tenacity and haste to develop a swarm legion capable of defending the exposed leader and extending the hive mind's influence. This is highlighted in the illustration of its card, which evokes a sense of proliferation, as well as the card's cascade mechanic, allowing the first sliver to quickly amass generations of drone defenders in an instant. Though not explicitly stated, I'll assume most of the slivers printed in Modern Horizons 1 are members of the first sliver's brood. Though present in all 5 colors of mana, most share strong affiliation towards red and white, which is mirrored in their aggressive solidarity in protecting their hive mind and brood in a rigid, almost martial structure. We hear this in the flavor text of First Sliver's Chosen, which states, "The most tenacious members of the hive instinctually guard the first sliver," and in Lava Belly Sliver, "Warm enough to incubate eggs or incinerate those who would eat them." Little else is known about the ancestral hive mind and its potentially ancient progeny. Next come the hive minds of Dominaria and Rath. Firstly, the Sliver Queen. This sliver and her brood were stolen away from their native plane by the Phyrexian Evencar Volrath and transported to the artificial plane of Rath to further his obsessive experimentation. Volrath saw within the slivers a dangerous biological weapon that, if understood, could further his and Phyrexia's machinations. He controlled the queen and her progeny through use of the mysterious Hivestone artifact, and spent years conducting experiments on the slivers, while placing the queen within the Furnace of Wrath to guard stolen artifacts of the legacy weapon. Members of this brood of slivers carry the traditional appearance of a single talon and a powerful muscled tail. The queen's progeny appear in all 5 colors of mana, and it's believed that Volrath was successful in genetically creating his own sliver lineage, which he introduced to the hive, though it's difficult to determine which are artificial. When the skyship Weatherlight journeyed to Rath to retake the legacy, they were met by fierce resistance as slivers poured forth to guard their queen, in whose lair the artifacts were placed. The crew was successful in their mission when Karn Silver Golem approached the Sliver Queen and appealed to her nature as a hive mind and mother. We hear this in the flavor text of Victual Sliver. "We are kinfolk," explained Karn to the Sliver Queen. "Just as you need your progeny to complete you, so do I need the pieces of the legacy to make me whole." Slivers of the Overlord were born not from the earth, but from experimentation undertaken by ambitious mages within the Riptide Laboratory on Otaria. Archaeologists uncovered fossilized remains of wrathy slivers from the volcanoes of Urborg, and the Riptide Project was created to revive and understand the extinct species. The project was destined for disaster. Unaware of the sliver's vigorous adaptability, the Riptide researchers failed to prevent propagation after successfully reviving their first test subjects, and slivers quickly overtook the island, leaving slaughter in their wake. The tragic fall of the Riptide laboratory is catalogued in research notes left by a deceased scientist. We hear of the sliver's escape in cards like Ward Sliver. The first wave of slivers perished from the Riptide wizard's magic. The second wave shrugged off their spells like water. Blade Sliver and Essence Sliver highlight the species' quick adaptation to life on Otaria at the expense of other creatures less fit. And in Crypt Sliver, a chilling rhetoric pondered by a Riptide scientist. Death couldn't contain the slivers. What made us think we could? The swarm grew erratic without the commanding presence of a hive mind, however, and lashed out aimlessly at Otaria. Their desire to be led manifested in a fixation on the Mirari, an artifact of immense power whose pulsating aura imitated the call of a central mind. The revived slivers were irresistibly beckoned to the Mirari as its waves of energy rolled over them. Necessity and desire fueled the spontaneous creation of a new hive mind. Thus was born the Sliver Overlord. Slivers from this brood appeared in 3 5-color cycles: commons at base power toughness 1-1, uncommon with 2-2, and rare at 3-3. Most slivers twisted by the Mirari were destroyed when a magical blast swept across Dotaria during the ascension of the false god Corona, but some yet remained. Given their hardiness, a few is all that's needed for massive broods to develop once more, and the slivers remained on Dominaria for some time. Decades pass on Dominaria as the plane enters a state of temporal crisis fueled by the disregard of planeswalkers and other powerful entities whose actions devastate the fabric of reality and drain Dominaria of its mana. On waves of time and space roiled by the time spiral crisis comes a most peculiar strain of slivers. Through holes in the tapestry, they emerge from unrealized pasts or alternate futures. The Sliver Legion is the embodiment of the central nervous system and acts as hive mind for this brood of slivers. It could represent an early prototype of a hive mind lost to the ages, or perhaps a highly evolved mind from the distant future, one that's realized the benefit of splitting its intelligence across multiple bodies. Whatever its origin, the Sliver Legion is unique in that the hive mind isn't a singular entity, instead an amalgamation of several that is just now flitting with emergence of a new consciousness. We see this in the illustration of its card. The flavor text states, "Hidden within the clicking, chittering swarm is a unique mind, still young, but growing more aware as time passes." The time spiral crisis saw a gross proliferation of slivers, as they were one of the few races on Dominaria hardy enough to survive climate changes, temporal rifts, and desiccation of choked mana ley lines. The flavor text of Bone Splitter Sliver highlights this. As the time streams grew more and more unstable, Dominaria's creatures struggled to adapt. The intense pressures led to many dead ends, but also to lethal new forms that appeared as suddenly as the Ashen Rains. Many interactions and observations made on these slivers are documented in the words of 3 characters which appear in several flavor texts. The first is a Banalish scout who details how difficult of an adversary the slivers are, changing their characteristics with each skirmish and becoming better equipped to overcome Banalish assaults. The second is a field researcher that highlights some of the terrible yet awe-inspiring adaptations the slivers undergo, while shaping themselves to the hostile, ever-changing environment of Dominarian crisis. The Planeswalker Frailes makes several remarks highlighting a dangerous concept, that these slivers, without an established queen or hive mind, are on the cusp of adaptation and may likely evolve into a species that can not only survive in isolation, but thrive. This is featured in the flavor text of Ghostflame Sliver. This breed is on the cusp of evolution. It burns away the markings that connect it to a queen that no longer heeds its call. It seeks a new master. Perhaps I can give it one. No mention's made of the sliver's extinction following the mending, so it can be assumed that many still roam Dominaria, searching for a hive mind strong enough to lead them. We next venture to the plane of Shandalar. Almost all we know of the Hive Lord and Slivers of Shandalar comes secondhand from the field notes of Hastrick, a Thunian scout and shapeshifter who used his abilities to enter the Sliver Hive on Skep and document his findings. Segments of his research can be found in the flavor text of several Sliver cards. The scout makes a supposition that the Sliver Hive Lord, progenitor of the brood on Shandalar, might have arrived from another world, pulled through the ether by magic or chance. This explanation for how Slivers arrived on the plane is somewhat founded, as Shandalar itself is considered rogue, moving through the multiverse in chaotic fashion and drifting alongside other planes in the blind eternities. Perhaps Shandalar drew close enough to Dominaria or the Sliver homeworld and pulled the Hive Lord through a connection between realms. Hastrick's musings are written in the flavor text of Sliver Hive Lord. This is the source, the line unbroken since the calamity that brought such monsters to our shores. Though the Hive Lord shares color identity and general physical features of other Hive Minds, the Sliver brood of Shandalar differs from the other lineages in many respects. First, their in-game mechanics only extend to Slivers under the influence of one player rather than granting boons to all Slivers on the battlefield, perhaps suggesting an altered neural network or communication apparatus within the Hive Mind. Second is their appearance. Slivers of Shandalar lack the characteristic sinuous bodies, muscled whip-like tails, and singular talons common amongst Dominarian Slivers, instead possessing a roughly humanoid bi- or quadrupedal physique and tendrils that emerge from the base of the skull. Their physicality suggests these Slivers may be more advanced or intelligent than other lineages, a sentiment echoed in the flavor text of Steel-formed Sliver. Though the Slivers may sometimes resemble us, they are not human. Anyone who fights them must remember this. The Hive Lord Slivers can further be divided into different strata depending on their purpose and utility. Thrums occupy the lowest level, the drones and workers of the Hive who assist in further proliferation of the brood and maintenance of their dwelling. Next are the predators, like the Groundshaker Sliver and Belligerent Sliver. Bestial in appearance, these Slivers maintain an animalistic aggressiveness and are guided primarily by instinct and impulse from the Hive Mind. Finally, there are the Primes, Slivers that most closely resemble humanoids, who communicate in their own language of clicks and whirs, demonstrate higher intelligence, and perform specialized roles within the Hive. They can be seen in cards like Sentinel Sliver and Thorncast Sliver. The Hive Lord and Slivers of the Skep present a dangerous threat to Shandalar that, if not dealt with quickly, could consume the entire plane. There are a few Slivers worth discussing independently, as their appearance, abilities, and text is suggestive of the idea that this race exists on many more planes. The Enduring Sliver calls on the determined resolve of the Abzan, desert warriors that survive in the endless sand dunes on the plane of Tarkir. This Sliver's art is demonstrative of the deserts Abzan protect, and the Outlast ability it grants is the hallmark ability of the clan. The First Sliver's Chosen and Dregscape Sliver both possess abilities that first appeared on the plane of Alara. Exalted was a mechanic of the knightly castes and angelic heralds of Bant, while Unearth appeared on several undead and creatures of nightmares that slinked through the stagnant wastes of Grixis. Finally, there is the Tempered Sliver, that appears to dwell in the border of the Mephedros and the Tangle on the metallic plane of Mirrodin. Its illustration harkens to Mirrodin's unique ecology, and the ability it grants is seen in the cycle of Slith cards, a creature native to the plane. Does the existence of these Slivers prove that the race has spread across the blind eternities and colonized several more worlds? Most likely not, but it's an interesting thought experiment, as is their potential role in the future of the multiverse. Slivers are a dangerous and highly temperamental species. They represent the pinnacle of adaptive ingenuity, a force of nature that could be unleashed to devastating effect. What does the future hold for a race that has both proliferated to dizzying degrees and flirted with extinction? Will they be utilized by the heroes of Dominaria in the fight against New Phyrexia? If controlled, they could be a powerful weapon, adapting quickly to Phyrexia's machines and inoculating themselves against its contagions. Or will Phyrexia's glistening oil lay hands on the Sliver genetic makeup and create a new, corrupted, and Phyrexianized Sliver hive mind, adding to the relentless masses of an unstoppable New Phyrexia? Only time will tell. Thanks so much for watching and listening to a study in versatility as we scrutinize the slivers of Magic the Gathering. Now I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts on slivers, what hive mind and brood is your favorite, as well as suggestions for future videos in the comments below. And if you're a fan of lore and storytelling, consider subscribing to the channel or checking out the podcast where content's uploaded frequently. Again, a huge shout out to all of my Patreon supporters who make all of this possible. I couldn't do it without their spectacular patronage. If you're interested in becoming a Lore Luminary for access to me, a great community, and early video drops, check out the link below or head to patreon.com/Lorebrarians to learn more. Until next time, go forth and explore the lore.